Hey everybody, welcome back. This is HD. This is going to be the HD Daily Ladder Show number 9 or 10, one of those. I don't actually remember which one it is because I lose track. My short-term memory isn't what it used to be. And so it is either 9 or 10. I believe it is 10. And of course, it is Happy New Year's Eve. I hope you guys all have something great planned for tonight. And yeah, I think after this game, I'm going to be doing some more of the pro game broadcast that I told you guys that I was going to do. It's fun watching me play, but I think it's even more fun from time to time to watch pro gamers play, real pro gamers, not the noobtard HD. He's not a pro gamer. So yeah, it's fun to watch some pro games once in a while as well, and I will be casting those as well this weekend. I think I'm going to have one coming up, so hopefully you guys stay tuned. I'm gonna find one right after this game and bring it out to you guys and cast it. So yeah, this is going to be the HD Daily Ladder Show number 10, I believe, and it is going to be, as always, in the first-person view format. I'm going to be playing as the Zerg player right here, the red Zerg, at the 8 o'clock position on Metalopolis, and it is going to be a Zerg versus Zerg. Now, before you guys smack your head and say, oh my goodness, another Zerg versus Zerg, this one actually I thought was really, really interesting. It was definitely an entertaining matchup, very, very close. So, and there's a couple things I want to talk about this particular matchup. I thought it was very, very much down to build order as well as micro-oriented battles. And for all you guys out there, even if you're not a Zerg player, I think there's something you can take away from this. It's kind of more of a general concept of StarCraft in general, and how to attack your opponent, when to attack your opponent, when to defend, getting the right types of units, that kind of thing. Overall, just learning how to adapt to your opponent's playstyle and what to do in those kind of situations. So as you guys can see here, I am going to be going for a gas first after pool. I did open spawning pool, and lo and behold, my opponent has opened up with an early hatchery. So this automatically means that I am behind in this game. I cannot hope to, assuming that we're both equally skilled, I cannot hope to win the game in terms of builds right now, because at least in the long term, I can't hope to win in a mid game or a late game because he's opened up with an earlier hatch. He's gonna have better economy. So for me to win this game, it will require me to do some early aggression so that my opponent cannot drone up and get more harvesters than me. And this of course holds true for Terrans and Protoss. If you're in a mirror matchup and your opponent goes for an earlier expansion than you, it falls on you to do some kind of damage in order to even out those small odds. But while it is small now, it can grow exponentially as the game continues to unfold. So as you guys can see, my opponent did get that early hatchery down. It's important right here to maneuver your overlords around, but in ZVZ, you can actually leave your overlords nearby the opponent's ramp, so you can see what kind of units they're pumping out, you can see where their units are moving, and so it's nice to keep your overlords around that ramp area. Now, I am going to be going for a ton of speedlings. Note that I did get my natural expansion down. It's a little bit later, but I'm going to be purely pumping out Zerglings at this point to try to bust my opponent's fast expansion, try to punish him for going for an early expo, and if not punish him, at least force him to not pump so many drones. So I am going to take control of this Xel'Naga Watchtower, and this road between our two bases, that road between our two bases on the bottom side, that's going to be very important to control the Watchtower and also have a ton of overlords around so you see what your opponent is making and what your opponent is up to. Now, it looks like he is producing a ton of Zerglings here. It doesn't look like he's going to be droning up yet, so his early hatcheries advantage isn't quite into effect yet, and it is going to be a Zergling versus Zergling battle at the center of the map. And just because I can see all these Zerglings streaming out of my opponent, I already know that the damage has been done. My opponent hasn't been able to make use of his early hatchery. Most likely, he probably doesn't even have any drones mining at the natural. If he's been producing this many Zerglings, there's just no way that he can be pumping economy. So there you guys can see he actually has a ton of Zerglings out, and I've actually been making a mixture of drones and Zerglings. A few drones here, a few Zerglings here. It looks like right now we have about even army sizes, so it may be advantageous for me to actually engage here And I may be a little bit under his army right now, as he's got a couple more Zerglings that just streamed out. So we're gonna go ahead and trade right there. And even though he came out on top, it's not a big deal. The reason is because we battled on his side of the map. So it takes him some time to come over to my side, and by the time he comes over to my side, my reinforcements will stream out. So that's actually one thing that it actually matters in all matchups where the battle takes place. If it takes place on the enemy side of the map, then it's not so harmful to you if you should lose the majority of your units, because there's still travel distance before your opponent can hit your economy. Now it looks like we are going to engage once again. Zerglings on Zerglings, tons of Zerglings getting killed off so far. And I realized, you know what, it might be time to go ahead and get a Baneling's Nest to deal with those pesky Zerglings, since there's so many. And obviously Banelings are very, very good against Zerglings. And of course, transitioning into the core staple unit in Zerg versus Zerg, the Roach. So I do have the Roach Warren on the way right now. And the Baneling's Nest is now ready. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen some pretty insane ZVZs where the Baneling just takes out almost everything, and that is going to be what's going to happen here. Both of us now having Banelings. Boom! Down goes my Banelings, but actually my Zerglings. But here comes my Banelings, going to take out all of his Zerglings as well. And that is actually a completely fair trade. And as you guys can see, it's very, very difficult to micro Zerglings versus Banelings, since the Banelings are quite fast, and you really have to pull all your Zerglings away except for a couple. So it's actually even more difficult than splitting Marines away, because Zerglings are so much more smaller and nimble. But as you guys can see, both of us still very, very close at this part of the game. And I'm actually moving my Overlord in here because I want to see how many drones my opponent actually has. I want to know where he is in terms of economy, if I'm behind, if I'm ahead. Do I need to make another attack, or am I safe to continue droning up inside my base? And that all comes with scouting. Everything that you do in StarCraft should be based off of what you scout your opponent doing. You never want to just play blindly unless you're executing some kind of a timing attack, but even then you always want to know, you always want to have an idea of what your opponent is up to. So one way to do that, obviously, moving in your scouting units, and the other way is just go ahead and make an attack. Poke in and see what kind of units your opponent has. So it looks like he is still producing mostly Lings and Banelings. We are going to have yet another engagement pretty soon here, and it's all going to come down to micro. If I can pick off those Banelings to allow my Zerglings to do damage, or if I'm going to mess this up and allow my Banelings to get destroyed. And so here we go, the Banelings taking out all my Zerglings, so that was very, very poor by me. And now my Roaches are completely undefended, and my opponent, a very good Zerg so far, is going to be able to get a good surround on my Roaches as well. Now, if you're in this situation and you lose all your Roaches, like I just did, obviously, as I said before, the battle took place on my opponent's side of the map, so it's going to take him some time to come over to my map, my base, and that's going to allow me to get a couple more Roaches out, and I should be able to defend against this pretty easily. I may lose a Queen here, maybe a couple of drones, but in the long run, if I can defend against this, then I should be in okay shape. Here comes the Zerglings getting a surround off on my Roaches, and if you ever think that you may lose the battle, pull your drones off the line. That goes for both Terran and Protoss. If you think you're in a desperate situation, use your drones. It's better to use them and help get a little extra DPS rather than lose your entire army and then your drones have to fight without the support of your Roaches. So it looks like I was able to fend off that last attack from my opponent, and as you guys can see, he is just now getting the gases up at his natural, and it looks like really he's just only barely getting his saturation up as well. So I think that I am about even in terms of economy, perhaps a little bit ahead even, as I have been pumping quite a few drones, and my opponent's attack after attack hasn't done much damage to my economy. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. Even though it's a ZVZ, mirror matchups obviously very volatile, depends a lot on scouting. I think that I may be in pretty good shape from my opponent, and I don't think I have to worry about an attack for a while. And this is obviously the time in the game when you want to drone up. You just want to pump mass drones. And that really comes with experience in the game. When should you pump a lot of economy? When should you pump SCVs slash probes slash drones? And when you should attack. Because I saw my opponent going for the double geysers, it kind of tells me that most likely my opponent is going for saturation right now. He's not going to try to attack me. So I'm going to play that same type of game as well. I'm going to saturate my mineral line, and I'm going to try to get the gold expansion up as well. Now, getting out my Overseer here, obviously, continuing with that kind of mindset where you need to scout your opponent and find out what your opponent is up to. It looks like he's also on the same kind of idea here. He's going to move his Overlord in, or Overseer, and see exactly what I'm up to. And I'm going to go ahead and run my units across the side of the map. Looks like I catch a couple of Banelings here, and so far this game's still very, very close. And strangely enough, my opponent here has a ton of Spine Crawlers, and this actually caught me a little bit off guard. Why does he have so many Spine Crawlers right now? And yes, I actually didn't micro my Banelings very well there. They kind of just exploded in the gas lines. But that kind of caught me a little bit off guard as to why my opponent would build so many Spine Crawlers. And then I was starting to think, you know, maybe he's spending all his minerals to Crawler up, and he's actually going for Mutas right now. So he's trying to build up his defensive grid, and he's going for Mutalisks. And it looks like, lo and behold, my opponent is indeed going, he has Spire, and he's already starting to pump Mutas out. So he basically hid the tech from me, got a quick Spire out, and this is actually really, really bad because he's got around 6 Mutalisks out. So I'm scrambling to get my anti-air defense up. As you guys can see, throwing up Spore Crawlers, trying to get extra Queens out, and of course, trying to get the Hydralisk Den out, as I've got to find some way to deal with these Mutas. It's obviously very late right now to try to get some anti-air, but better late than never, and it looks like I may just barely be able to hold on, and Transfuse right there is a very, very underrated yet nice ability. If you're in this situation, Queens are great anti-air, and Transfuse does pump quite a bit of health into every single Queen. But unfortunately, my Queens are kind of running away from the Spores, and the Mutas here were able to pick off almost every single Queen. So things are looking pretty bad for me. These Mutalisks are going to be able to do a lot of damage, and they're picking off almost every Hydralisk that comes out as well. So if you're in this kind of situation and you realize, oh crap, I'm under attack by Mutalisks, I have Roaches, well, what's the point of leaving your Roaches in your main? And this goes for Terran and Protoss as always. If you've got units that can't really do much else, then make them do something. Go attack. And it looks like I am going to find the third expansion of my opponent. Now, this does two different things for me. A, it's going to pull his Mutalisk back and allow me to establish some kind of anti-air defense. And B, of course, I'm able to take out the hatchery. So that ended up working out pretty well for me. Unfortunately, I can't really barrel down the front of my opponent's natural, not with all those Spine Crawlers there. So I'm going to fall back my Roaches, and my opponent actually making a counterattack with Speedlings at the same time. These Zerglings actually came out of nowhere, and I was in complete shock seeing all of these Speedlings run in, and thankfully my opponent decides to focus the Spore Crawlers rather than go after my main base and go after the drone. So that was a little bit of a break for me. And unfortunately though, my opponent finally finds my gold expansion. So that was my safe haven. That was my chance to stay in this game against the continual Muta harass. But now the Mutalisks have spotted that gold hatchery, and it looks like they are going to be able to take it out. I simply don't have enough anti-air yet, although it looks like I do have quite a few Hydras out now. And believe it or not, Hydras are actually pretty effective against Mutalisks, but unfortunately the gold hatchery gets taken out by the raw swarm of Mutalisks. So I realized, wow, my opponent is actually beating me. He's actually a really, really solid Zerg. And this game is one of the most intense ZVZs I've played thus far. Both of us sniping out a third hatchery each. Mine, of course, hurting a little bit more because mine was a gold. But both of us sniping out a third, and both of us going for completely different ZVZ strategies. He's going for Mutaling, I'm going for Roach Hydra. It's really gonna come down to the wire, and right now I was thinking, let's go ahead and move in and try to barrel down that front ramp. But first, go ahead and check the third. Obviously, you know, this is much easier to take. It's a much easier target. And it looks like I am going to be able to snipe that third hatchery once again. And really, when you're playing any kind of matchup, it's so key to be able to constantly contain your opponent and prevent him from taking the third expansion. And likewise, my opponent doing the same exact thing. He's got all these Mutalisks. He's actually just going to go straight for my natural expansion. And this will actually force me to run all of my Hydralisks back to deal with these Mutalisks. That is so many Mutalisks that I'm actually having a really hard time with my slow Hydras and my really bad creep spread. I'm having a hard time moving my Hydras around to deal with those Mutalisks. So if you guys are a Zerg player and you guys are watching this, one thing I hope you guys take away is creep spread. Creep spread is so important for Zerg versus Zerg and Zerg versus anything, in fact, that you guys can see that's what's keeping my Hydras from running back and forth. And in fact, if you're playing against Zerg, prevent the creep spread. It is so key. Anyways, here comes my attack. I finally decided to barrel down the front ramp. My opponent has a ton of Lings and Banelings, and I'm trying to prevent the Banelings from getting in range of the Hydras by using the Roaches as a meat shield. But unfortunately, those Banelings did a ton of damage to my Hydralisks, and that is actually really effective. Really smart. Banelings are extremely good against Hydras because Hydras are considered light. Nonetheless, though, I am going to be able to take out my opponent's natural. At the same time, though, on the mini-map, my gold hatchery once again goes down to the Mutalisks. And I realize now that we're both going to trade once again a hatchery apiece. But my opponent is just about to morph out this third, so I realize I gotta try to take out this third expansion, no matter the cost. But unfortunately, my opponent just has too many Mutalisks. Even though I've got some pretty good upgrades, I think I was at +2/+2, maybe +1/+1. My opponent still has that very large and menacing flock of Mutalisks flying about and threatening to end the game. So things were looking pretty close here. As you guys can see, both of us now essentially on one base. Both of our mains are mined out. I'm at my natural, my opponent is at his third. And things are very dicey right now. And I would honestly say my opponent would have has a pretty large edge because he was able to take out so much of my anti-air with those Banelings. And now I'm actually running on a mineral patch that is running out. And in retrospect, I actually realize now that I have so much gas. You know, Infestors would have been a great play. Infestors are obviously very good against large clumps of Mutalisks, and I actually even had the Infestation Pit out, so I was planning to go Infestors, but I guess I never clicked on the Infestor button for whatever reason. So hey, I hope you guys take away another lesson from this. If you guys are playing ZVZ and your opponent's getting mass mutas, go for Infestors. Infestors are very good against Mutalisks. Obviously fungal growth as well as spawn infested Terran. So I'm kind of banging my head against the wall right now. Why didn't I get Infestors? I'm not even sure why. And in fact, it looks like my natural expansion, I didn't even have my second hatchery hotkeyed for a while there, so it's building up a bunch of larvae. But it doesn't really matter because I don't have much minerals left. I am running dry. So it looks like this game is gonna end in favor of my opponent. He's just got too many forces. He's got a fresh base running, and unfortunately I never really made any Infestors to deal with the Mutalisks, especially towards that late game. The last few minutes I had a lot of stockpiled gas. So as you guys can see, I do lose this game, and I like to cast games not only where I win in ladder but also where I lose. I think you learn from your mistakes, and hopefully you guys learn from my mistakes and you guys don't make these mistakes when you guys are playing on ladder. So yeah, make Infestors in ZVZ if your opponent's going for mutas. Ling and fungal growth is very good against that. And that was an extremely entertaining Zerg versus Zerg. Very back and forth, very intense. It probably would have went on longer if I had done the tech switch and actually adapted to my opponent's strategy and gotten infestors. So that's another thing hopefully you guys take away is watch the replay after your games, learn from your mistakes, and figure out what to do next time. So anyways, that's going to be it for me. HD going to be signing out here. Happy New Year's, holidays, and Christmas, and 2011 just around the corner. HD signing out.